Foreword by Jim Haynes, OAM. I feel quite privileged to be asked to write the preface to this collection of writing by New South Wales Seniors card. Perhaps my main qualification for the task is the fact that I am one of that group myself. Like many of the authors included in this volume, I had quite a lot of life experience before I self-published my first book in 1994. Since that time, I've been fortunate to work with several publishers and edit 35 books on Australian social history. My current publishers, Allen and Unwin, are about to release my latest effort, Great Australian Odysseys, by Sea, Sky, Road and Rail. It will be the 19th time that this wonderful Australian-owned publishing house has, for some reason, considered me to be a risk worth taking. So, as the theme for this year's collection is Then and Now, it is with some trepidation that I attempt to say a few words about sitting down in the now to write about the then. Here goes. For me, writing history is like rowing a boat. You move forward while looking back to see where you have been and where you have come from. Naturally, the older we are, the further down the river we have travelled. Therefore, from an artistic point of view, if you are writing social, personal or family history, you have a much bigger landscape to look at and talk about, and write about. My passion as a writer is to research our social history and find out how we came to be the way we are. What were the circumstances behind the incidents and events that made our society the way it is? In short, I like to write about the things that make history interesting, and I find the best way to do that is to do the research until I understand the background, and I'm able to tell the truth about events and characters and not just repeat the myths and the simplified versions from the past. It is always the truth that is most interesting, and the truth is in the narrative. Do the research and be as honest as you can. Those who come to write history with an agenda, that is, with an opinion already in place, are less likely to give the whole story. History begins to make sense when it becomes a story. Discovering the facts and making sense of them, and explaining them, is always the best way to make things that happened in the past into good stories, but you must do this with an open mind. As my journalistic and literary hero, the late Les Carlyon, once wrote, "You should be prepared to be surprised. You've got to accept that sometimes the story doesn't lead where you thought it would." One example of an unpleasant truth in our history is the fact that the Australian colonies would never have federated if they had not all agreed, whether they liked it or not, to a White Australia policy. Sometimes progress was contingent upon things that may not be palatable to our modern tastes. It is important to be truthful about these things and understand that the big picture is made up of many different brushstrokes. I like to write about things that I think Australians ought to know, but often don't. How did bubonic plague and 2 shipwrecks modernise our city of Sydney? Why did Western Australia vote to leave the Commonwealth in 1933? How did the drunken soldiers' mutiny that terrified the citizens of Sydney in 1916 help to bring about the social evil of 6 o'clock closing, which lasted 4 decades? Or why, in 1932, did we go to war, officially, against the poor old emus? Of course, writing factual, social, family or personal history is only one form of literature available to senior writers. Another perfectly legitimate way to write about the past, and put it into context, is to use the very powerful literary device of nostalgia. The dictionary tells us that nostalgia is a sense of longing or wistfulness for the past, often a time with happy memories and personal associations. It seems to me that this is a perfect way of handling the then and now when people of our generation decide to write. A feeling of sadness and pleasure mixed together in the present as you think about past events. However, the sentimental longing for a period in the past might just as easily come from the recollection of an embarrassing event or a tough time in life reconsidered in the light of subsequent events, something that can only be fully understood in retrospect. Handled properly, this contrast of the then and the now, that is, nostalgia, can be a powerful tool to use in your writing to reveal human truths and shared feelings to your reader. Your specific personal memories, no matter how trivial they may seem, can touch a nerve in your reader's mind and result in a connection which makes for a universal sharing of emotions. That is successful writing. As senior writers, that is, old people, we have these devices and techniques available to us, and it would be foolish in our twilight years not to make good use of them when we sit down to write. Jim Haynes, OAM, entertainer, author, speaker and broadcaster on 2GB.